Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Ryan. Today I'm pretty excited because I get to have a bunch of whiskey from what I believe is the best craft distillery in Michigan. Okay, and frankly it's not even close. And to be honest, in this lineup is the best whiskey they have ever made, in my opinion. So that's high praise. And this distillery, the one thing I think they gotta dial in is the cohesiveness of their branding. So I never know what to look up for them. Am I looking up New Holland Spirits? Am I looking up Dragon's Milk or Origin? Or now we've got other whiskeys coming out like While I Run. It's like, it's just, I feel like they need to have a little bit more consistency. And are they a brewery? Are they a chain of restaurants? Are they a distillery? It's like they're all of those things. So I don't know if they could kind of get that all wrapped up in a nice, neat package. I think that would be great. But this is New Holland Spirits. They make the Dragon's Milk Origin juice, amongst other things. And recently I had the wonderful privilege of going and standing out in the cold for several hours. So here in West Michigan, it does get pretty chilly. And this particular day was, it wasn't it was close. It was down single digits. It was real cold. It was real stinking cold. So I got in big puffy snow pants and a big puffy coat and a big thermos of coffee, and I had a lawn chair, and I sat there in the cold like the Marshmallow Stay Puft Man, right, for a while. And I picked up 3 brand new toasted bottles. So what they do is, this is kind of a tradition for them in the fall and in the spring. What they'll do is they'll take their Dragon's Milk Origin and they'll take I'm talking tiny batches of it. And then they will finish it in toasted barrels. And they do several different sort of flavors. This time around, I have E, F, and G were the 3 barrels that they did. And you could get 1 bottle from each barrel. And that's what I did. And I did it for guys in our whiskey community who were really desperate to get some of the stuff, so we kind of wheel and deal a bit. So I picked those up for them. They were very kind enough to send me back samples of the bottles that I picked up for them while I waited there. So we have 5 whiskeys on the top here. We have the 3 toasted barrels. One is finished in toasted barrels and sherry barrels, right? One is finished in toasted barrels and port barrels. And the last one is strictly double oaked, toasted barrels. No fruit, additive or, additional flavor from a previous spirit of any kind. So anyways, that's that. And then we also have, they were selling that same day, the maple and the honey cask finish of their standard origin juice as well. So I've got all of that: maple, honey, sherry, port, and double oak toasted. Amongst these 5, by the way, is what I believe is the best whiskey that has ever come out of this distillery. Stay tuned to find out which one is which. But we're going to write down the line here. We'll go with the maple and the honey, and then barrels E, F, and G, which is the sherry, port, and double oaked. Now, I did sit down with the other guys. So there were, 5 of us all sitting down together, and we went through these together. So a lot of the notes I'm going to share today are sort of the consensus. And there was, by the way, consensus. I think between the 5 of us, we all had them in the exact same order of favorite to least favorite, with one exception. One guy had the last 2 switched. But for the most part, we all thought very similarly about these barrels and bottles. First one here is the maple cask finish. And you can tell, it smells like barley and pancakes. Like maple syrup on pancakes with some of that malty barley note. And that's the thing about the bourbon coming out of New Holland, is that they don't disclose the mash bill, but they do let us know that it's a high barley mash bill. I think that's very evident. I mean, it tastes like a dessert whiskey, straight up. You get the caramels and vanillas from your bourbon side of thing, your stewed corn, but the maltiness of the barley comes through big and bold, kind of like a lightly glazed bran cereal. But then you just get hit with this giant wave of maple syrup, which is pretty common here in West Michigan. Lots of farms, lots of sugar shacks. When I used to work at a church, there were like 3 families in the church that made their own maple syrup right there on their family farms. So Christmas time was great because I usually got like 3 to 4 bottles of homemade maple syrup from the congregation. It was wonderful. And this reminds me of that, fresh from the sugar shack, thick, viscous, even chewy kind of maple syrup. Love it. That one, as advertised. Pretty good. Nice and viscous too. Kind of clings to the glass. A little bit of a disclaimer here. I just had a cold and I feel great. I can taste, I can smell, but my voice isn't fully recovered from the process of all the coughing and whatnot. So if I sound a little raspy and gravelly, more so than normal, I didn't suddenly get more manly. I just recently got over a cold. I think the getting more manly ship has sailed for me. I am kind of where I am. Next one is the honey cask finish. And all of us unanimously got like savory notes off the nose of this. Like I kind of expected this one to be sweet and desserty, but the nose kind of has a funk to it. It makes me think of barbecue sauce, even like bacon fat, kind of a salty, briny note to it. Yeah, and that kind of funky, salty note carries over to the palate, not in a great way. This was unanimously the last place, save for one guy who had it in second to last place. But we all were pretty unimpressed with this one, which is a bummer. I know a lot of people really like the honey cask, but amongst the 5 of us, none of us were really vibing with this, especially when we know what else they're capable of, because some of their other juice that we've had has just blown us away. This did not do that. I think that this is actually kind of, I don't want to say like raunchy, but it's kind of got like that kind of a note to it. You know what I mean? Like spoiled to a certain degree. And that makes me wonder if we got a bad barrel or a bad bottle. Maybe bad batch. I don't know. But then that's an issue with quality control. But I don't actually find this to be that good, the honey cask. I think of the 5, this one just doesn't deserve to be sitting next to them because some of these are incredible and this is not incredible. So that one is a pass from me. Late into the finish, like I'm talking late into the finish, as it's clinging, sitting there, some of that honey comes around, but that like briny, salty note is so over dominant throughout the entirety of that sip that I just don't care for it. But those aren't really the star of this show anyway. The last 3 are the ones that were really here to, let them shine. These are the toasted barrel finishes. Now these are all distillery only releases, by the way. So in the spring or the fall, if you're looking for a place to go visit in the spring or the fall, I recommend West Michigan. It's beautiful out here, by the way, but also having the opportunity to get your hands on the distillery-only toasted barrel batches of their Dragon's Milk distillate, I don't think you'd regret getting a bottle of this stuff because I haven't had a bad one yet. This one in particular is the Campfire batch is what they called it. And they said we called it that because after the toasted barrel and the sherry finish, we were getting these Campfire vibes. So you get this kind of smoky and savory note on the nose, but you also get these sweet, like raspberry and fruity notes as well. And I gotta say, totally true. I get sort of a toasted marshmallow. They said cinnamon swirl bread, and we were all like, totally, get cinnamon on the nose of this. I think that's spot on. I think I like coffee cake on the nose. It's really sweet and cinnamony, but it also has that savory bready component to it as well, which I think just pairs wonderfully, especially in the holiday season. I think this one kind of stands out as the most holiday-ish pour. Let's get in on it. Cheers. That's absolute dynamite, guys. That is so good. This tastes like a proper holiday pour. Nutmegs, cinnamons, cloves, spices like that. Then you get that fruity component from the sherry finish. It actually makes me think of like holiday punch or wassail, where you got like the fresh cranberry in there alongside those cloves and spices. Yeah, that is seriously one of the best pours I've ever had from New Holland. For me, in this lineup of 5, it ends up taking my second place. And it's stinking phenomenal. We're setting the bar super high. Let's move on to the next one. This one they called the dessert bottle. This is the toasted barrel and port barrel finish. I really should have said this sooner, but the proofs on these are all pretty similar. They're around the 115 mark, right? All around the 115 mark. This one's 114.4. And this is 2024 batch F for the toasted series. And all these are around $90 a pop at the distillery. All right, nose on this. Very sweet. I'm talking like fresh raspberries, super fruity, super sweet. It smells like if you took a fresh raspberry and you dipped it in honey, just thunk, dipped it in honey. That's what it smells like on the nose to me. But the port influence is pretty evident here. You think of a lot of red fruit notes like plum, your raspberry, your funky grape, your cellar grape, you know what I mean? Well, let's get in on it. Cheers. Cellar funk is a good way to describe this pour. It's very fruity. I think the port does a lot of work here in terms of the flavor. And if you like port finish stuff, and that's your vibe, I think you're gonna vibe with this bottle for sure. As somebody who really loves their origin distillate, my only complaint about this particular bottle is that the port overrides a lot of the things that I really appreciate about Dragon's Milk Origin distillate. And like the stone fruit notes, they kind of go away. That wonderful glazed bran cereal barley note kind of gets hidden in the port finish. And so this is very sweet. It lives up to its name as the dessert bottle. But for me personally, this ended up taking 4th place out of the 5 today. It's sweet and it's yummy and there's nothing wrong with it, but knowing that it's Dragon's Milk Origin distillate and not getting some of those hallmark notes off of it that I've come to associate with that distillate, it leaves me just a little bit disappointed. And that was the consensus with the guys too. Let's move on to the last one. Now, this last one. I told you guys up front that one of these bottles was the best bottle of Michigan whiskey I have ever had in my life. And you'll notice we haven't gotten there yet. It's got to be process of elimination. Yeah, it's this one. This is batch G, right? EFG? I think this is, yeah. So 2024 G of the Toasted series. This is your double oaked Americana is what they called it. Yeah, and ironically, we've got a sherry finish and we've got a port finish. This is the most pleasantly fruity nose of the batch by a landslide. We collectively we were thinking things like strawberries and cream. It's this soft red fruit, strawberries and cream, a little bit of confectionery sugar sweetness to it. And this ton of this bubblegum note, you know, like if you were to open up a fresh pack of Big League Chew as a kid. I remember as a kid playing in the local baseball league for kids. It was called the Pal Club for me. P-A-L, Pal Club. At the end of every game, you get to go to the concession stand, and they had like 2 shelves, and if your team lost, you got to pick from the bottom shelf. And it was still decent candy, but if your team won, you got to pick from the top shelf. That top shelf had Big League Chew. Remember those packs of Big League Chew? You rip the top off, and then inside it is these strips of bubble gum, and it's just coated in that white, powdery, sugary substance. And as soon as you rip the top off of that, and that odor comes up out of it, oh man, that I get right here on this bottle for sure. Let's try it. Cheers. Man, that's incredible. That strawberries and confectionery sugar and bubblegum comes right up front. You get hit with that sweetness, and then it is balanced out almost immediately by those other notes that I love about Dragon's Milk Origin. I get that maltiness, and it kind of has this bready quality to it, like rye bread, that kind of helps keep that sweetness in check a little bit. So it's not too sweet, it's not too savory either. Kind of toe the line there, and it gives it wonderful balance and nice framing. But the note that I'm left with the most in the finish, as it just drags out into eternity, is strawberries and bubblegum, or strawberry bubblegum in general. That is a dynamite pour. Hands down the best Michigan whiskey I have ever had. This is whiskey excellence right here. And that's not to knock my other Michigan distilleries. You know, a lot of them are making decent names for themselves. You think of Journeyman. You think of Eastern Kill. I'm a big fan of Eastern Kill's distillate. And once that really starts to mature even more, I think it's going to get even better. I also really like Traverse City Whiskey Company. Like their single barrels, their wheated bourbon, all that stuff really, really good. So I'm not knocking any Michigan distilleries, but I just think that the bar has been set really high by New Holland Spirits with their Dragon's Milk Origin series. Also, Walleye Run, which is right there on my shelf, super good malted rye. That's a 7-year-old malted rye, and I think it's like a $45 bottle. That's a steal. All right, so my order then is first place right here, the Americana. So G, boom, first place. Second place, and it is pretty close for me, but second place is going to go here, the Campfire. So this is batch E. Third place is going to go to the Maple. The Maple Barrel is my third place. Fourth place is going to come here to the Dessert Port Whiskey. And then dead last, and it's not close for me, by the way. The gap between 4 and 5 is pretty wide. But the Honey Cask finish, I don't like it. Personally, I think it's not great. So we have the full spectrum here from like, this is it. This is exactly what we want. This is the creme de la creme. All the way down to, this is not it. This is like bottom of the barrel nastiness. So we got the full spectrum here, but luckily hitting the highs, we've got several that are on the high notes, right? Between the Americana and the Campfire and the Maple. All three of those dynamite pours, guys. Highly recommend them. If you have not tried any new Holland stuff out, you gotta do it. It's straight fire. And I have now done this ritual where I stand out in the cold and wait for these bottles like 4 times. I have never regretted it. This stuff is worth it. It's super good. You ever get a chance to try this stuff out, you gotta do it, all right? And if you're ever like, man, I wish I had connections with people who had access to cool bottles, this is some of my favorite whiskey in America, is the stuff that is local and excellent, and you have to be there to get the stuff. That's just like the best stuff in America right now. Obviously, you can't go wrong with the legacy distillers, the allocated bottles, the limited releases, the secondary market. It's marking them up 300% because they're so good. Those bottles, sure, they're great. I love having them. I like having them on my shelf. I like taking pours from them. But I think some of my favorite stuff that's happening in America right now in the whiskey industry is stuff like this. If you want to have connections with people, you want to be a part of a community that is nationwide, multi-state, and has their finger on the pulse of local distilleries in all 4 corners and the Midwest and the middle and everything in between, check out our Discord. Our group is phenomenal. They're wonderful human beings, and I love them to death. I enjoy just chatting with them on the daily. Our Discord is bumping, always popping, people posting what's happening in their local whiskey communities. They're posting bottles they're picking up, all that stuff. And they're also swapping samples. So if you ever want to try something that somebody else has access to and they want to try something that you have access to, that's perfect. We are tailor-made for that kind of a community. Check us out. Link in the description to our Discord. If you ever want to get involved in some of the events that we do, our bottle shares that we do, our tasting nights, even some potential barrel picks coming down the line, feel free to check out our Patreon group. You can just do the base tier, literally $1. It's basically free. That gets you in the door for our Patreon lounge in Discord. And then obviously you can up your tier from there if you decide, hey, I like these. These people are all right? These people are all right. I want to stick around a while and get involved in some of these activities. You can always bump it up after that. But just to get in the door, throw $1 at it. Come in and say hi, introduce yourself, and we'd love to chat with you and get to know you. All right, with that, I say cheers, my friends. That was a really good one. That might be the best cling I have ever had on this channel. You joke. That was good. You heard it, right? It resonated. It dinged hard. Didn't have to ding that hard, but it did. It sure did ding that hard. Cheers, my friends. May you live richly and get better with age, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.